Our ABBA location tours will continue soon, but today I'd like to do a historical tour. Astrid Lindgren is one of the world's best-known authors for children's books and fantasy stories. ABBA is one of the best-known pop bands of all time. I talked a little bit about them on this channel. Björn has recently been working with the granddaughter of Astrid Lindgren for a new circus musical based on Pippi Longstocking. But there have been a few other projects between the ABBA members and Astrid Lindgren over the years. Those are very fascinating, and for some of them I also need your help. So let's explore them together. Hey! So, as far as I know, the first connection between a member of ABBA and Astrid Lindgren herself happened in 1980. It was in context of a non-smoking campaign in Sweden, and for that there was an interview between Astrid Lindgren and Agnetha. First off, yes, Agnetha was actually still smoking during that time. That doesn't mean you can't participate in an anti-smoking campaign. She even says in that interview that it is very difficult to quit, that she doesn't feel good when she smokes, and that she was smoking very little back then. The campaign was intended for children and teenagers, and the interview was published and handed out in Swedish schools. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a more high-res version of this paper than that. This must be an extremely rare item, and I really wonder, is anyone out there who actually has this publication in their collection? Let me know in the comments below. That would be absolutely fascinating. Anyway, we are lucky to have a transcript of that interview thanks to Klaas and his wonderful website, the Agnetha Astrid Archives. And it is even translated into English for the international audience. The headline means Meeting Between Småland Women. Småland is a province in Sweden, and both Astrid and Agnetha are from that area, as they noticed in the interview. It's a wonderful conversation, I highly recommend it, and I will put a link to the interview in the description below. The original publication came with a wonderful photograph of Agnetha and Astrid Lindgren, which does exist in good quality. Apparently this is the only photo of the two that we have, and the only photo of Astrid Lindgren with any ABBA member, as far as I know. There is another connection to Astrid Lindgren from the 80s, kind of ABBA related, when director Lasse Hallström, who shot most of ABBA's music videos and their first and only feature film, did two films based on Astrid Lindgren's stories of the children from Bullerbyn. In 1987, Astrid Lindgren's first epic fantasy fairy tale, Mio min Mio from 1954, was made into a film. The title track by the same name was written by Björn Benny and recorded with Gemini. This is one of my favorite compositions from Björn Benny. It really fits the epicness and has all those Swedish melancholic undertones that we love so much. There is also an English and Russian version of the song, all produced by Björn Benny for Gemini. Benny actually wrote 4 more instrumental pieces for the film, which were all released as part of its soundtrack album. If I'm not overlooking something, this is actually Benny's very first musical work for a film soundtrack. In the following years, during the 90s, he would write many soundtrack pieces for films, series and theatre productions, most of them for the Swedish artist Marie-Louise Ekman. If you're not familiar with her, she's also a painter, and you might have seen this very painting that she did for Benny's second solo album, November 1989. In recent years, Benny did some more soundtracks, marvelous music for the wonderful Swedish films of Roy Andersson, and most recently he returned to the fantasy genre with his soundtrack for the Swedish film Cirkeln. Of course, we shouldn't forget his actual first soundtrack that he wrote together with Björn for the softcore film The Seduction of Inga in 1971.
Everything you ever wanted in a woman.
Or maybe we should forget about it. The story of Mio min Mio is not over yet, because 1 decade later, in 1998, we got a Swedish musical, and this is where I really need your help. Does anyone have any information about this? Because I just couldn't find anything at all on the internet. There is absolutely nothing. I know from a friend of mine that Benny wrote the music and that it must have been really good, so I'm even more surprised to find next to nothing about this. The only thing that did surface just a few years ago was a wonderful upload from Jay Dingemans, who has a great YouTube channel with many rare tracks. This particular track is called Väverskans Song, music that Benny Andersson wrote for the Swedish musical Mio min Mio in 1998. This recording does not sound like an audience recording from one of the shows, but more like a demo with a count-in at the beginning. So I'm even more perplexed as to where this actually comes from. The song itself, as so often, evolved many years later into a song for Benny Anderssons orchestra called Nyårsballongen.
Torsdag, nyårsballongen, ingen av oss är en ö. Eller ska den smyga? Eller sjunka, stå på spänn. Eller hur? Det är snyggt.
Det är fint.
Och det går väl även första gången, va?
Ja, det gör det.
So if anyone knows anything about this musical project, please let us know in the comments below. Astrid Lindgren passed away in 2002 at the age of 94. And now, 20 years later, Björn worked together with her estate, including Astrid's granddaughter Malin Billing. They produced a circus musical based on one of Astrid's most celebrated characters, Pippi Longstocking, or Longstocking in English. Recently, they also released the soundtrack for the show, which features 11 tracks with lyrics from Björn, and 4 of those songs were written by Björn and Benny. I have seen the show, and I can say that this is another wonderful collaboration between members of ABBA and Astrid Lindgren's stories and imagination. I'm not a child, but I was literally mesmerized more than once during the show. So for children, this must be mind-blowing, to say the least. And it is no surprise to see Björn being involved in a project aimed for children. He also wrote 2 children's books in recent years. In 2010, he published The Little White Piano, and in 2014, he wrote Pop Story, to which you can also watch a beautiful animated short film inside ABBA the Museum, narrated by Björn himself. Next week, I want to talk more about the circus show and the new soundtrack album. We will also return to Agnetha very soon, more specifically to 1987 and her solo album I Stand Alone. And, as I said in the beginning, we will certainly continue our ABBA location tour through Stockholm. And you know what else would be very nice? To do a location tour of the places connected to Astrid Lindgren. I'm not sure if that's something you'd like to see, but it might bring us even closer to those picturesque landscapes of Sweden. Let me know in the comments below what you think about that. And again, if anyone has any more information about that musical of Mio min Mio from 1998, that would be fascinating. Other than that, what do you think of these connections between members of ABBA and Astrid Lindgren? What are your favorite stories of hers? Alright, until then, heyo!